Minister Kang, what keeps you up at night?
Well, I think three things you asked for, and I think many of these issues are interrelated, so they can be packaged into three key areas. Of course, from my government's point of view, getting traction on the denuclearization and peace process that is very now much in motion. It's a daily concern to get movement on this, but if we compare where we were a year ago, I think we're in a much better situation. You know, a year ago, we were faced with growing tension and confrontation with North Korea testing its sixth nuclear weapons test and a series of missile testing as well. And as a result, the global community has responded with a series of sanctions resolutions, which remain in place because these will remain in place until we see are assured of North Korea denuclearization. Compared to that situation where we are today, after two South North Korean summits, the first ever US-North Korea summit, and through these summits, the three countries agreeing to work towards complete denuclearization, and by that we mean North Korea's complete denuclearization, and also agreeing to work towards a more stable peace regime to replace the armistice regime, which is currently in fact. So in the larger scheme of things, we made huge progress, but getting traction on the negotiations to get to that goal is a daily concern. We are currently preparing for a third summit meeting between my president and the chairman of North Korea next week in Pyongyang, and hoping that this will be a significant step forward on denuclearization and peace. Second point, rising protectionism, and I think that's very much related to the rising nationalism in countries and doors closing. It's most visible in the trade area, but it is also visible in terms of the whole migration issue. I think in this age of globalization, people movement is a natural part of daily life. And I think the world has responded with openness. But in recent years, post the migration crisis in Europe, and we see this happening everywhere, the doors are closing. And I think that will be a huge loss because co-prosperity in this globalization age very much depends on this exchange of people across borders. Obviously, you have to contain the negative side effects of this, and that's very much a prerogative of national governments to control their borders. But we must do it in a way that leaves the doors as open as possible about the people exchange. So protectionism and rising nationalism, and of course the protectionist trends in the trade area is a particular concern. It's a concern for all of us who thrive on free and fair trade, but South Korea is very dependent on our external trade and economic relations, and so I think those of us who are for fair and free trade should make sure that this trend is countered with greater efforts to preserve the multilateral trading system. And thirdly, we are promoting a new policy to strengthen our relations with our southern neighbors, ASEAN, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. There are other competing, I think, initiatives in this area, the Indo-Pacific Initiative, the One Belt and Road Initiative, and it's good that we have these initiatives because it underscores the centrality of this region, the centrality of ASEAN. But we must ensure that these initiatives are promoted in a way that's complementary, that preserves the openness, the inclusivity, and the transparency, and very much in line with established international norms.
Minister Takakono, would you like to?
Could I just add to that? I think I pretty much said in shorter terms what the Deputy Prime Minister said in terms of the Indo-Pacific, the various versions of that depending upon the country, but it's critical that the fundamental principles of openness, inclusivity, and transparency is what drives all of these initiatives. I think the centrality of ASEAN is also a fundamental element, and therefore our new Southern policy is certainly designed to work with ASEAN towards a generation of momentum for further growth in this fourth industrial revolution age, which means really utilizing the possibilities that technology offers us to enhance connectivity within ASEAN, to close the development gap within ASEAN. And we have a sort of a lead experience in this area in the IT sector. Our experience in e-government, e-commerce, and smart cities and smart factories, I think will certainly be something that we can offer to address this challenge within ASEAN of connectivity and development gap. So I think all of these initiatives really should focus on the centrality of ASEAN. And I think if we do so, we have a shared grounding where we can then make sure that these initiatives are complementary. I think Minister Kono has been provided, yes, are these protectionist trends, but there is also a huge push to further expand free and fair trade, and the TPP initiative is certainly very important. And as he said, I certainly hope that my country will be able to join sooner rather than later. But there's also a lot of discussions going on to upgrade existing free trade agreements, whether at the bilateral level or at the regional bloc level. So it's not all protectionist trends gathering steam. There's also a lot of efforts to preserve and further expand the free and fair trade space. I think the President Jokowi said something very important, I think, at the plenary yesterday, which is that the fourth industrial revolution provides us with an opportunity of a world where resources are not limited but unlimited. Resources are not finite, but infinite. Because what the technology of the fourth industrial revolution enables us is to utilize, to develop human resources to an extent that we were never able to do before with the traditional methods of education, but also use the material resources that we have in much smarter and efficient ways than we have ever been able to. So that hugely opens up the available human as well as material resources that society can use. And I think we have huge potential here in Southeast Asia to really take grasp of that possibility that the fourth industrial revolution, I think somebody said, don't call it revolution, call it liberation. And that's probably the better framing of the potential that this offers. Of course, the pitfall is, as all technological breakthroughs pose, is that if not channeled in the right way, and this is where governments come in, you cannot let these technologies evolve on their own. There has to be some regulatory framework to channel that into ways that benefit the whole of society. And that's good governance, that's good public policies, and that's basically the role of governments. But I think we should make sure that these new technological advances do not further exacerbate the development gaps within societies, between the poor and the rich, between men and women. And I think this is where policy thinking comes in.
I believe we have time for
one.
Could I
just add
one
point to that? I think certainly it's a challenge for governments to take the possibilities and the challenge of the technology and design education policies to grow people who are fit for purpose, but also while maintaining their humanity along the way. But I think governments also have to be careful not to get in the way. And I'm thinking of K-pop. Everywhere I go, I'm just amazed at the amount of support and enthusiasm that the Korean pop culture has created in so many different countries. And this is not because of any government policy, it's the creativity and the spontaneity of these young generation who are very agile at utilizing all the technological devices at hand. And so the government shouldn't get in their way. The government's work is to open new possibilities, but certainly to create a regulatory environment that harnesses that creativity and rather than hinders that creativity. It's difficult. It's extremely difficult, but that's why you're in government. Well, if I may answer the question on South Korea Vietnamese, the relation, I think it's by all accounts mutually beneficial and growing. Vietnam is our largest trade partnership in ASEAN, largest destination for our investment and largest destination for our visitors to this region. And I think there's like 7,000 or nearly 8,000 Korean businesses finding home here with the full support of the government here. And I think our approach to this relationship is one towards co-prosperity. And so, fitting our engagement that it serves the purposes of the Vietnamese government and people. And I think that I could rest that question there. But the U.S.-China relations, and if you look at just the trade side, it does look very at a moment of particular tension. But I think these are two big players in the global stage with, strategic calculations that sometimes diverge, but also at times converge. And I think on the North Korean nuclear issue, they have converged, and both working towards a complete denuclearization. And I think there's a shared strategic interest in getting to North Korea's complete denuclearization. And this is also because they are two of the 5 members of the UN Security Council, the P5 permanent members who have the primary responsibility for peace and security issues around the globe. So I think you need to expand the context to see the two powers engaging with each other at certainly there are moments of tension, but I think there are also moments of strategic convergence. That's always a very difficult question for me because the answer is different whether you're talking about today or yesterday or tomorrow or a week later or a month later. But I think given the primary foreign policy agenda on my plate at this point, which is North Korea's denuclearization and peace, I think I can be optimistic. Okay. And I think a nuclear-free Korean peninsula that is wholly at peace will certainly be a great addition to the peace dynamics in this region as a whole.
Minister Kang, thank you.